Hey, you guys. It's Tumblers and True Crime Tuesday. Okay, so this video is only 9 minutes, and y'all know I talk a lot. So let's get directly into this story and pray that I get through it in these 9 minutes, or less than 9 minutes now, because I ramble. Anyway, today we're going to talk about Gennady Makasevic. I'm pretty sure it's Makasevic and not Makasevic, but someone will correct me. I want to start with very little is known about Gennady until after he'd been caught for his crimes. This is because of how the former USSR worked back then, stupidly. All of the information I gathered should be taken with a grain of salt, as I felt that all the sources were shady. So there's that. Let's get in it. Gennady Makasevic was born on April 7th, 1947 in a village in Belarus. He was raised by both parents. I didn't find anything on his mother, but his father was an alcoholic and routinely abused drugs and alcohol, hence alcoholic. Jeez, Karita. I write these scripts. Anywho, as an adult, people would describe him as a quiet, mild-mannered man. He graduated college, served in the military, got married, had kids. He led a normal life, relatively. He worked at a repair shop. He was a loving father to those kids. He didn't even drink. At one point, he was part of the neighborhood watch, which worked closely, very closely, with the police. He was seemingly normal on the outside. Though no one knew, his abnormalities began, according to Gennady, when he returned home from the army to find that his girlfriend had left him and married someone else. Rude. This is prior to the marriage that we just spoke of. Anyway, he was so distraught. He moped around for a few days until he decided he'd hang himself. But before he'd do that, he'd go home and see his parents one last time. So he sets out to the town where they lived, but he misses the bus. This would only add to his severe depression, of course. So while walking, in the direction of his parents' house, Makasevic sees a young girl walking by herself and decides that he's going to direct his hurt into other avenues. This woman is the first person he rapes and murders. He dragged her into the woods, raped and strangled her. He didn't stop there, though. He would go on to kill another woman in October of 1971 and two more in 1972. His killings were mainly to facilitate the rape, but he would also rob them of anything valuable. I suppose this is because it was there, and why not? He'd already taken their most important possession, their life. Why not take the little stuff too? Anyway, Gennady continued his seemingly normal life and graduated from a technical school in 1973. He then got his job at the repair shop. 3 years later, he would be married and have 2 children. But behind the scenes, the killings would continue, and he began taking the items he'd stolen and giving them to his wife as gifts. Oof. The police were having no luck figuring out who's doing this and why. There's just dead women showing up everywhere, because they think that all of the murders they're having that seem to be in a localized area and have the same MO are all from different people. According to the author notes from the book Murder by Numbers, the 100 Most Deadly Serial Killers from Around the World, Makasevic's investigation was seriously hindered by the authorities' insistence that serial killers were a decadent capitalist phenomenon and didn't exist in their socialist paradise. A quote from the book states, "The murders are separate incidents," the police insisted, "not connected at all." And so off they went to arrest the suspect, 4 in fact, over a 14-year period, one of which was executed. It was an arcane and inept stance, one that allowed a killer to massacre at least 33 women in 14 years. Okay, back in it. At some point in 1980, 9 years after the killings began, they realized after very many murders now that this may be the work of one man. But I think that it was because they brought on a new young investigator. This investigator insisted that this was the work of a serial killer. So now they're on the right track. And after doing actual investigative work, they found out that the culprit drove a red car. Since by this time, Gennady is a part of the neighborhood watch I told you guys about, and he's working with the police to help solve the crime. He is in it to win it. He's even interviewing the owners of red cars. He's so normal that the fact that he is driving a red car does not even register with the police. He was all good with the killing. He even managed to kill 12 women while working closely with the police. He was that good, or the police were that bad. Ugh. But to quote an awesome cartoon, and he'd have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those him. Meddling him. In an attempt to further throw the police off his case, he decided to fabricate an underground group that was killing communists, but only women. He wanted to enforce his point, so he left a letter with his next victim. This gave the police 2 samples of the killer's handwriting. I do not remember where the first sample came from, but I wrote it down, so there has to be another one. Well, since all of the murders were local, the police decided they'd check the handwriting of these letters to everyone who received mail in the town. They requested that every male in town give a handwriting sample. I'm assuming this was one of the times Jennedy didn't know what was going on in the investigation, because he too gave a handwriting sample, which of course matched the letters. Though they had to sift through over 500,000 samples before landing on Makasevich's handwriting. But after doing a bit more investigating to make sure that they had the right man this time, we've already gone over that, but we'll talk about it again in a sec. They arrest Jennedy on December 9th, 1985. He initially denied everything, even telling his wife as he was hauled away in handcuffs that this was all a mistake and he'd be right back. He'd eventually break down and confess to 43 murders. He even led the police to some of the places where he'd hidden the things he'd stolen. He told them about the items he'd given to his wife. He had even gone so far as to melt down some of the wedding rings from his victims and have them used as fillings for his wife's teeth. Jeez. From here, it was a pretty short walk to prosecution. He'd already confessed to the 43 people. Police were able to find about 35 people and evidence for those 35 people. So he was convicted and sentenced to death pretty quickly. And since the Soviet was shisty, don't come for me, people, we don't know exactly when he was executed in 1987, but it was in 1987, and it was by firing squad, because apparently they were still using the firing squad in the 80s, Jesus. This case was pretty well hidden from the U.S. until its conclusion because of the corruption going on in Russia. This case fully exposed all of that, as 14 other men were arrested and convicted for Makasevich's crimes. They were tortured until they confessed. Some were even executed, as we, again, established. This is why they worked so hard to make sure that Makasevich was the right man, because they had screwed it up so royally already. And look at that. I'm done with a minute to go. Okay, y'all. I did it. I got the story out before the video's done. The cup's not done, and you'll see that. But you get to look at the last part of the cup. The video's going to cut out from here because I used my phone to record, and my husband called me. Nope, my best friend texted me. Marvin texted me, and I did not know. So, sorry, y'all. Anywho, enjoy the little bit you can see. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm not going to say see you next Tuesday. I'll see y'all next week. Bye.